So I have some time from work. I came home to do some online classes and they're over a little bit early. So I have some time in the day. And, usually I would just like take out my phone, start scrolling, or, now that I can't scroll on my phone, well, I can. I have spent more time on Pinterest this month than I ever have, and I've had to consider that I might have to lock that too. Um, I didn't realize that I had a phone addiction until I decided to deal with my phone addiction. I say addiction in those terms. But I have that extra time, and usually I would spend that time scrolling or, finding something to watch on my laptop or, sleeping. But this is a way for me to sit with my thoughts, and I have been having thoughts, and I'm learning to sit with them instead of always trying to get rid of that uncomfortable feeling. I'm trying to learn to sit with those thoughts, and some of the thoughts that I've been having have been really around kind of existential. I would say I do a lot of existential thinking, have always done a lot of existential thinking. It is part of the way that my brain works. I've got some neurodiversity going on up there, So one of the things that's always on my mind and has always been on my mind ever since I can remember is the fact that I am a person. How is the best way I can put it? The fact that I am a person, that I exist apart from other people, and how I move through that kind of existence. I do apologize if you can hear my neighbor's construction. What I like to call the everlasting construction that is going on next door. It has been going on before I moved here, and I don't know if it will ever end. Like I wish it was like it used to be a joke. I know it's not even a joke anymore. I don't know if it will ever end. But that aside, so if you do hear her dogs or the people doing their jobs, you know, as I was saying, I do have a penchant towards the existential, and part of why I put off recording videos of myself for so long was kind of that fear of being kind of seen, I guess. The moment you are perceived by someone else, your existence becomes solid, right? There is a concept in physics that I am kind of aware of. I do love the theoretical concepts of physics, but please do not ask me anything about actual physics. I don't know. I did one term of physics in grade 9, and then I did the most basic of physics in my biology degree to be able to do integrated science. And the theoretical parts I understand, the practical parts I don't, but there is a part in theoretical physics where they talk about, there are some, I believe, I could be wrong, I could check, but I'm not going to, but there are some parts, I believe they're protons, either protons or neutrons, or I know for a fact that electrons change when they are perceived. I did watch it's not SciShow, it's in that universe. A crash course video about electrons that Hank Green did, that talked about how electrons can change once they're perceived, because I did have to do some points of chemistry. But there are also other particles within like that small physics. I don't remember if it's particle physics or none of that tiny physics, right, where these particles barely like they don't even kind of exist unless they're being perceived. And there are some particles that once they're perceived, they change how they behave, so there's no way to know how they behave without them being perceived. And that has always sat with me as a way to think about kind of identity. Like, who am I if I am not being perceived? If no one is looking at me, if I don't have to perform the act of identity for anyone, who am I? Who kind of am I in myself? And then I also grapple with, is that something that's extremely individualistic, right? Am I being too individualistic about it? Is it less about who I am to myself, or is it more who I am within community and within relation? And sitting down, having the time, pursuing a second degree, right? Which is where the train of thought kind of started, is that I'm here and I'm thinking about, I'm doing this degree for myself, right? I'm kind of changing my career path. I am in doing that. I have to be kind of shackled to this job that I really don't like. This job isn't anywhere near what I did my first degree in. It's such a basic job. You need the most basic of qualifications to be able to do the job that I do. It's not, they weren't doing this while I was in class. I've had a 2-hour class and there was silence and the wow. Okay. Anyway, um so where was I? Right. So my job doesn't need any deep qualifications. It's a really basic job. And it's not a hard, oh my goodness, it's not a hard job by any means. I'm not going to sit here and behave like the job is difficult. It really isn't. It is, by and for all intents and purposes, a really easy job to do. It's a really simple job. Um, but I hate it. Like, I am grateful for the fact that it allows me to have an income. I am grateful for, the fact that it allows me to have an income. Oh my Lord. Right, as I was saying, I'm really grateful for the fact that it allows me to have an income. It really does help with, pursuing the degree. But the thing about it is, most mornings, even though it is an easy job, I wake up and I dread going to work. I don't have any, there's nothing that makes me happy about going to work. And it's not even like, happiness is fleeting, right? You're not going to be happy all the time, but there is nothing that brings me any joy or anticipation about going to work. I dread having to wake up and become this person, like put on this people suit. Like, and anytime that I journal about it, I call it a people suit. I feel like I have to put on this people suit and go to work and interact with people, and there's the nuances and minutia of what's too much to say, what can I talk to people about, what can I talk about. I in that regard, I like small talk because there's a script and I just follow it. Everybody hates work. Everybody wants to talk about the weather. Everybody wants to talk about what they're doing right then and there. So I don't have to go any further than that if I don't want to. But it's also like, I dread having to do all of that interaction, right? I dread having to go to work. I dread having to, when I get there, it's, not so horrible. But I hate it. I hate it so much. And that then links back to identity, right? Like, what about that do I hate so much? There really isn't anything about the job that is so disgusting. Like, that's so deeply hard, but it just feels so soul sucking. And it is for, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, a literal pittance. Like, to convert it to US, this is less than 400. So 300, 400. This is less. My salary is less than $4 an hour. I no longer, for the company that I work for, I no longer have the option to make any kind of bonus on that salary. I'm working completely for that flat base rate, and I've been at the company for a year, so we're entitled to a raise for every year that we're there. The raise used to be up to 5%. No one really get it, so they would kind of cap it at 4. I know it's capped at 3, which means you can only make a 2% increase, which means the increase that I made this year is going to be completely eaten up by deductions, like tax deductions. It's negligible. And then I feel bad when I want to have any kind of complaints about it, because there are so many people who don't have a job, who are in worse situations, who are working harder jobs, more physically and mentally demanding jobs, for the same, if not less, compensation. And I sit when I can at home and I think about it. I consider it. I feel terrible both ways. I feel terrible because I complain about the job, and then I feel terrible because I hate it here. And I spent a lot of time in my teen years hating it here, as in I did not like being on the planet. I had it really rough mentally for a really long time, and it never let up, especially when I was in my teens, and I would say up to my early 20s. Things did improve over time, but there were some points there when it was really touch and go, and I had it really rough. My own brain felt like a monster I could not grasp or reel in. And I think for people who don't struggle with any kind of mental health issues, or people who aren't neurodivergent, it's kind of hard to understand your own mind being a monster outside of your control. And this now links back to the identity thing, right? If my mind that I possess is something that I feel I have no control over, is it really I think and therefore I am? Am I without perception? Am I without that brain I can't control? Am I, if I am not these bad feelings, right? And the more I think about it, and the more I sit with it, I realize that I don't have the answers. I like having answers, and I realize I don't have the answers, and I realize that's probably not always a bad thing. I don't always have to have the answers for everything. When I was younger, I felt like I always needed to have the answers all the time for everything. I needed to know, because my identity was linked to how much I knew. I had to be smart because everybody always told me I was smart. So my identity became linked to how smart I could be. And then I got older and realized I'm probably not as smart as people thought I was. And then there was that struggle, the struggle of, am I really intelligent? Should I be linking my identity to my intelligence? Is there something else that I should feel proud of myself for? And there was a period there where I just abandoned trying to be quote unquote smart at all. I wasn't getting good grades. I didn't feel smart. I was surrounded by people who did so much better than me at everything, even the things that I thought I was good at. And it took a while, and it's still a work in progress, to build myself as a person outside of other people's projections and perceptions. I still get into it with my mother about that, because she, of course, has her perceptions of me, and I live with her. She is a big part of how I interact with the world, the things that we have been through together, the things that we have done to each other haven't always been pretty. I don't know anyone who doesn't have a complex relationship with their parents. Actually, that's a lie. I know like 3 people who don't have complex relationships with their parents, and I envy them, because when you have a solid, simple relationship with your parents, it's so much, it seems, I'll say, so much simpler to deal with other things. But then you have, you know, well, yeah, they are really going at it with the construction, as they should. I mean, it is their job, and hopefully they, you know, finish whatever they're constructing. But yeah, um, without the constant distraction of my phone, um, and how I've been trying to reduce the distraction of my laptop, even, I really have dipped back into my natural state of existentialism. Um, and I haven't thought about it in a long time, because I realized how much of a distraction my phone really has become. I hate to admit it, but my mother was right. It really is that damn phone. I have been sitting down and trying to think about the things I used to define myself now, and how I defined myself, and also if defining myself is really that important. There's always a question of, oh, tell me about yourself and blah 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 blah. And I'm coming to the realization that I contain multitudes. I truly do. I would always struggle with the who am I kind of question, because I feel like, especially when it comes to interacting with people, I do put on a mask. I put on a farce. I put on my people suit to go and interact with people. But is my interaction with people my identity? I don't think so. And I have gone down, to thinking about who I was when I was younger. The parts that I can remember, like what was I like when I was a child, what were the things that I liked, what were the things that I disliked, who was I before I was aware that the way people perceived me affected me. Because I was always aware of being perceived. I was always aware that people were there and people were seeing me, but it didn't have as much of a chokehold on my behavior. I wasn't as socially anxious. I was just willing to do things. I was willing to just be a person. And as I got older and I learned more perceptions of what a person is supposed to be, I tried to play into those roles, and none of them really worked for me. And I realized that that's because you have to build your own perception of yourself and what a person is. It is impossible to never perceive yourself, but you have to build your own perception. You have to do that self-discovery, and self-discovery doesn't always mean, I believe right now at least, locking down an identity that this is who I am definitively forever. I think it is a process of discovery. It is a journey. You will change, your opinions will change, the things you enjoy and don't enjoy will change, and you will realize that some things will remain the same. My mom brought home a copy of A Wrinkle in Time the other day, and I haven't read it since I think I discovered it at the library when I was like 13, and I haven't read it since. I read the trilogy, I think it is, and then I haven't read it since. And then I picked up the book again and I devoured it in a couple of hours, and it's been so long since I have taken up a book and been so enraptured by it and held by it. And I got completely different things from the book now that I'm like, I turn 28 next week, so I got completely different things from the book now that I read when I was 13. I identified much more with the main character when I was younger, right? But now I identify much more heavily with one of the secondary characters, right? I understand his feeling of being misplaced and not really belonging, in his family, and all those kinds of emotions. Because when I was younger, I didn't feel that, right? I didn't feel I still don't necessarily feel out of place in my family, but I understand more now that feeling of being out of place. I did identify when I was younger with the really strong emotions that the main character had. Her emotions are really intense, and I do understand that intensity of emotion Even when I don't feel it myself, I was raised by a person who has very intense and always has had very intense emotions. And maybe one day I'll do some thinking about like what that does to a person when you are raised with someone with intense emotions who doesn't necessarily regulate them the way that an intense emotion should be regulated. I now have to learn how to regulate my emotions on my own. It was not a skill, that was not a tool that was handed to me, as Bose would say. It was not a tool that was handed to me. I have to learn how to deal with those skills and how to regulate my own emotions. I have to come and do that on my own now as a grown adult. But yeah, these are the things that have kind of been swimming around in my head today. I'm dreading going back to work. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and be like I'm going to be hopping, skipping, and jumping back to the office. I really don't want to go back. If it was up to me, I would not go back. But it is not up to me. I have responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities under capitalism is making sure I have money to live. And really, it's not even money to live. The pay really isn't enough to live. I make it between paychecks. I don't make it from one paycheck to another, which is one of the reasons why, even though I wish I could, moving out is not a feasible option. Home is not the best place to be, but it's not necessarily the worst place to be either. And no, especially after the hurricane and so many people lost so much, I am just sitting and realizing that it really could be a lot worse. There are so many people that have it so much worse than me. Like right now, people who I am related to, my own family, they lost literally everything. The river took everything away. And so I'm sitting here and realizing, hey, it could be bad, but it could be worse. I didn't know that I would record another video again so quickly or so soon. I am genuinely excited to just sit down and basically yap to myself. I did not realize how cathartic it would be. I didn't realize how much it would be something that I enjoyed. This is the second video and I can say, yeah, I enjoy this. This is the part I enjoy. I don't think I'll ever enjoy any form of heavy editing, but this part is fun. And it's been such a long time since I've been able to do something fun that doesn't cost an exorbitant amount of money. When you're an adult, everything that is fun costs money. When you are a child, it does still cost money, but it's someone else's money, so you don't have to think about it. Now I have to think about it. I am saving to do a few fun stuff later down in the year, and now that I'm doing this, I think I'll record some of the fun stuff. I'll probably take pictures of it. I probably won't do any like vlogging. I don't think I'll ever be a vlogger, but who knows, as I said, identity is never concrete. It just feels so good to have somewhere to put my thoughts, right? Like, yes, I have my journal, but I don't crack out the journal, like I said, all the time. About once a month, I will do some retrospective journaling. And one of my goals for this month, I there is a channel I'm subscribed to. I think it's called Mia's Digital Garden. Again, I'll link it. But she talked about, instead of setting goals for your New Year's resolutions, setting experiments for yourself. And one of the experiments I set for myself for this month was actually to go back through some of my old journals that I have. I don't have any of my old journals from when I used to live in England. Those journals are in a shed in England, where my mom stored a bunch of the stuff that we couldn't move with. But I do have some journals, a decent chunk of them from, starting when did we move? When I was around 9 to about now. And I have always written in these journals and I've never looked back into them. I've never reread my own journals. So now that I'm turning 28, yay. Why are women so afraid of aging? I shouldn't be terrified by the concept of getting older, and I think that has more to do with the fact that I'm a woman than the fact that I'm getting older. But that's another tangent for another time. For one of the experiments I set for myself this month was that I was going to go back through my journals, and I'm going to read a few of them. I started with the journal that I have now, which is this one. You see, it's very thick. This is going to last me a long time. I got it off Shein. You can tell this is Shein quality. I'm going to have to fix that at some other point, but I started with going through that journal, and I was reading some of the stuff that I wrote 2 years ago, and I'm looking back at what I felt like 2 years ago, like the person I thought I was going to be 2 years ago, and boy, a boy, oh boy. And I really think that's all I'll say about that. And 2 years isn't really that long of a time, but oh boy, did I have some things going on 2 years ago. One of the things that I'll probably talk about at another point more in depth, but touch on now, is that I had to really learn how to decenter men. Like, I know it's a buzzword now, but I didn't know that that's what I was doing at the time. But I went through it with guys, and I really had to sit down and disconnect from especially romantic feelings towards men. And I've been sitting with that for like the past 2 years. Like, I was in a relationship for 7 years with a man who I really still care about. I no longer love him romantically, but I really do still care about him. And then after I got out of that relationship, there was just a slew of back-to-back bad decisions, and I had to sit down and come to terms with myself, come to terms with my own sexuality, come to terms with disconnecting from men. And that's been really helpful. And I think once I do some more in-depth journaling about that, I'll have more to say about it, because my thoughts around it, all my thoughts are disconnected. I am a scatterbrained human being, but I want that to be a little more put together before I put my thoughts out there, But I think it's about that time. I am sure I have been yapping for at least almost half an hour, and I'm not going to lie, I do want to take a nap before I have to go back to work. And I also need to think about what I'm going to eat. I've been trying to eat less fast food recently. It was going well for like the first month. Like, the monthly experiment I did for that did really well, and then I took a financial hit in the fact that I backed into someone's car and had to route money into fixing said vehicle. But yeah, so I have to be going to the supermarket, and going to the market is such a time suck. Like, we don't necessarily have like, DoorDash, and we do have like food services that will deliver fast food, but I think it's only in like the city where you will get the one city that we really have, our main capital city, where you can get like groceries delivered. It's also so expensive. So when I go grocery shopping again, I don't hate cooking. I hate it when I'm tired, but oh, hello, my cat is here. He's an indoor cat. He does go outside. He is neutered. I don't think he was neutered when he was so young. I don't think he knew he had balls before they took them. But he's a good boy. He probably came in for water and food, or just to cause me stress and strain, because he is a cat, and so that is his favorite pastime. I love him to death. I would die for him. I would kill for him. I'd start an empire for him. I love him more than anything. So yeah, I'm gonna leave this here because it is going to take time to render and upload, and I do have to do some basic editing on it, some cuts where I'm sure I was silent or something. But yeah, thank you for being here. If you listened to all of that yapping, I hope you were able to do your dishes. If you were crafting, I hope that whatever you make, I am pushing my good vibes, my good intentions. I hope it will come out better than you expected. If you just needed me as a body double to be able to do something, I hope whatever you're doing, it gets done in a shorter time than you expected. Thank you guys for just being here. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for giving me this space to express myself. It feels, as I said, so cathartic. It feels so good to have a space where I can talk about these things. I don't really have anyone else or anywhere else to put them. So if you like the video, we all are slaves to the algorithm. Comment anything you want to talk about. I'll definitely be in the comments. Time zones might differ, but I'll definitely be in the comments, definitely be responding. Subscribe, to fight the man, I guess. We are all out here just trying to do our best, even if it never really feels like it's good enough. We are really out here trying to do our best and fight the big bads that are really holding us hostage, our attention, our creativity, our thoughts. And I hope you have a good day or night or evening or morning, wherever you are. And yeah, thanks again for being here. I really do enjoy doing this.